Okay, great, great. Thanks for that kind introduction. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So my plan was to talk about Kailash first. So let's see, share. I guess you can't see it yet. And I'm gonna turn on slideshow there.
There we go.
Okay, great, great. Yeah. So can everybody see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, great, great. Okay, so my wife Maitri and I started this project in 2007. Um, Actually, it says 2008, June 2008. It was actually June 2007 before acquisition. Sorry, that's before acquisition of Amrita Field. So the field in the foreground here, that was the property next door to the apartment complex. And this is what Kailash looked like when it was the Cabana Apartments. It was a 32 unit apartment building constructed in 1959. It was high end at that time. It had a Hawaiian theme. It was called the Cabana Apartments, and every unit had a dishwasher. And um, this was the age of Sputnik. So we were entering the wonderful future after World War II, and it had a swimming pool, and it had a community room in the front, and a gym, what they called the gymnasium, with a pool hall, uh, and a pool hall and kind of game area. And then it fell on hard times, and I don't really know the history. I mean, it's when we started, it was like 50 years, close to 50 years old. Um, but it fell on hard times, and uh, in 2007, Maitri and I were interested in moving our sustainable projects that we had been doing in single family properties in Portland for, 10 years or so. We wanted to take it to the next level, which is get community involvement, create a sustainable community. So we explored co-housing. We actually joined a co-housing in Corvallis, which is now Coho co-housing, and then realized we didn't want to leave Southeast Portland. Then we started with Joe and Pam Leach, Columbia Eco Village in Northeast Portland. And even Northeast Portland was like 40-minute bus ride away. So we dropped out of that after getting Pam and Joe and started on that. And then we were looking for our own property and came upon this rundown apartment complex that had a fairly uh, big area that could be turned into gardens. You saw the aerial photo. Most of it was paved, but we knew about depaving. And we figured, hey, this would be a great project to start. So now we're 16 years in, and it's been a really great adventure. And it's a really wonderful place to live. I mean, I can't imagine a funner place to live than knowing all your neighbors, gardening together with your neighbors, getting together with, potlucks and meeting each other in the gardens. I mean, it's really a wonderful, wonderful way to live. You can have a very low carbon footprint when you live in a sustainable community. For example, Maitri and I, we don't even own a car. But we have access to two electric vehicles that are owned by the community, and we can rent those whenever we need to, so long as somebody else is not already using them. But you can get rid of a lot of your personal footprint by sharing your possessions with your neighbors. So I don't own any garden equipment. Um, we don't own a car. I mean, so many things we don't own. The community owns it, and everybody gets to use that. So it's a really cool model of living where you can really lower your carbon footprint dramatically and have a lot of fun at the same time. So that's the goal for tonight, is to show a little bit about what we're doing and show that we have a lot of fun doing it. So this is a presentation I did for a recent uh, community event called Redesigning Our Communities for Life After Fossil Fuels. So, I mean, clearly we're quite a ways away from the end of fossil fuels, but uh, we're pretty far forward on the path of figuring out how to get by without fossil fuels. So we generate about 2/3 of our own power, including for our two vehicles. Um, and we're very energy efficient. When housing is clustered together like this, where you share 5 out of 6 walls with your neighbors, you don't have a lot of wall space that loses heat. And so you can really lower your footprint in terms of keeping yourself comfortable year round. Anyway, let's go ahead with this presentation. America has hundreds of thousands of neglected apartment buildings. Why not retrofit them so they can more easily create and foster community, rediscover food production and composting, make the fullest use of resources by sharing, reuse, and recycling, and move to energy self-reliance, including transportation. So this is the nascent Annapurna Eco Village, which is next door. You can see down here in the corner. Can you see my mouse, by the way? I have a giant mouse here. So you can see a little bit of us right here, including our new treehouse right here. But so here's this 3.5 acre property next door, which has 5 buildings and a grass and ornamental landscape. And it's like mostly paved. There are like 85 parking spaces here. So this is an example. This one in particular was really run down and neglected and poorly managed. But even if they weren't, look at this property and imagine how could you change this to create a more interesting place to live and lower the carbon footprint of everybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And basically fulfill all of these goals that are listed here. So this was the marketing brochure for this property that came up for sale about a year and a half ago. It was listed, and the agent called us and say, "Hey, there's a property next door. Are you interested in that?" And by the way, I wouldn't be interested in doing a property like this or an eco village like this if it weren't next door. You have to live on site really to enjoy the transformation. I wouldn't want to be commuting to some property somewhere else. So it had a unique appeal because it was right next door and we could do a lot together and share what we already have going on here. So what's unique about the Kailash Eco Village model? So we're a rental model, which means no capital investment is needed for people to move in. All you need is first and last months, which people have to come up with anyway, right? So no particular uh, uh, roadblock for most people to moving into our property here. It's inexpensive. It's much less than a co-housing mortgage. In addition to a co-housing mortgage, if you live in a co-housing, which is a condominium model, then you also have the homeowners association fees, which can be astronomical. Like at Columbia Eco Village, they're like $300 a month. And their studio apartments are like 250,000. That was 15 years ago. I don't know what they are now, probably 400,000 now. But you can imagine the cost of living in a situation like that compared with just renting a 1-bedroom. We have 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartments here. The vast majority are 1-bedrooms. And they're very small. They're fairly efficient. We're 500, just over 550 square feet. So it's easy to try out community living with no long-term commitment. You do have to sign a 1-year lease. But after that, you're month to month and you can give 30 days and move out. And we've had a lot of people who have moved on to create their own projects, to create their own little urban paradise. We've had several people who wanted to do like a duplex or a fourplex project kind of model after Kailash. So here are a couple of photos. When we started, this was the swimming pool. This was the old swimming pool. This had been decommissioned probably 5 years before we acquired the property. You can see the parking lot here. And here's a view of the front of the building. So here's the Kailash from above. This is a drone photo taken during our intersection repair where we painted the street in the foreground here. And you can see the city center in the distance. We're about 4 miles from the city center. We're about a 1.7 acre site, 32 units in this building, 31 bedrooms, couple of 2 bedrooms, and here, and then this is 3 bedroom and 3 bedroom on up and down here, and then we have a tiny house here also. And the amazing thing with the tiny house is it's owner built and owner occupied. Isn't that a cool model? You can live in a building that you constructed yourself in a larger community like this. So for those of you who don't know about City Repair has been around in Portland 20, 25 years. And one of their projects is painting intersections. So 2 or 3 years ago, we painted the intersection in front of our building here, and we've repainted it once. You have to repaint these every couple of years because they do wear out. So we're close to city center. We're in a southeast Portland, which is a fairly level area and very bicycle friendly. We have about 55 residents living here. We're mostly singles and couples. We have a lot of retirees here. We don't have many kids. We have a newborn who's 6 months or so now. And a couple other kids, but 1-bedroom units don't lend themselves easily to families. And that's one of the exciting things with Annapurna is it's an even mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. So we'll finally have the ability or the wherewithal to invite families into the community. So Annapurna is right behind here. You can see kind of hidden by the trees here, but that's actually it right there. So the 5 buildings are right next door. So the living spaces I mentioned were 34 residential units, 35 if you include the tiny house, 31 bedroom apartments in 3 attached buildings, built in 1959. There's 2, actually there's a mistake there. 2 3-bedroom units, the upstairs and downstairs are 3-bedroom units. 2 2-bedroom units in the main building, and then 2 3-bedroom units next door in this 1926 bungalow that has been remodeled as a passive house. So this is a typical what a kitchen looks like, just a galley kitchen. You have a living room in front and a bathroom and 1 bedroom. We also have a community room. So this was actually designed into the original community. This was called the Lanai Lounge and had a little bamboo bar here, and that was basically it. But we've turned it into a community kitchen. We have a media area and a library here, so we can do movie nights and do presentations and things like that. You can see we can have quite lively gatherings here. So here Maitri is singing our Kailash theme song, which one of our residents wrote. This was our 6th anniversary celebration in 2013. We have an attached guest room. So typically in community living, if your apartments are very efficient, you don't have space for invited guests to stay with you unless they're going to sleep on the couch. So it's really cool to have a guest room where guests of residents can book for a few days while they're staying and visiting you. Then, of course, we have a laundry and mail rooms too. So community areas, of course, the whole outside is a community area. We have covered bike parking. We have a garden tool shed. That's that structure right here. This is our community composting area. And in 2023, we started constructing this tree house. So that's about finished, almost finished. Now we just have to do the living roof on it. But anyway, the gardens are about an acre of gardens. And that's where generally we meet each other in the gardens or coming and going typically. We have a community orchard with 55 trees. We have a community vineyard with probably a couple 100 feet of grapes, different types of grapes, raspberries, Marion berries, blueberries. We have a community garden program with 41 individual garden plots. So modeled after a typical city community garden program where you have your own plot and you totally control it. You can decide what you want to grow. And then we have most of the areas are communally gardens. So our orchard, vineyards, and berry patches, as well as many of our annual gardens are communally garden. So here's an example of our cucurbit harvest, different types of squash, pumpkins and squash, winter squash. This was back in 2012, and these are some of the residents during the harvest. You can see this is a fun place to live. So here's our front yard. We have this big circular garden, and that was designed to facilitate irrigation. So we have 3 irrigation spigots here in the center, and they can totally irrigate this in about an hour. So anybody who gardens in the Pacific Northwest or in basically Oregon, we have a very dry season in the summer, and irrigation is pretty important if you want to garden. So this makes it really easy to irrigate this entire space. So this is dedicated to our communally, or what we call our group gardens. We have rain and wildlife gardens here. This is a well with a living roof on it. We did a mural in our driveway. For many years we wanted to do, this is our intersection up here in the center background. We wanted to do a street painting, but you have to have the agreement of all the adjacent property owners. And this lady that lived in this corner hated what we were doing here at Kailash. She said, "You're going to lower my property values if you do that." So she wouldn't consent to for the neighborhood to do an intersection painting here. Finally, she moved out. Thank goodness. And then we were able to proceed in 2019 with our intersection repair here. So we have a community wood chip depot right off the street. We have probably about 1,000 square feet here where arborists can back their trucks up and drop off wood chips. And it's open to the community. Actually, anybody who wants to drop by and pick up wood chips is totally welcome to do so. And of course, it supplies all our chips. You can see all of our pathways are wood chipped. We combine wood chips with our kitchen compost and with our humanure compost to balance nutrients. So wood chips are really, really important. And it's enabled us actually to create a huge amount of new topsoil. We probably have created 6 inches of new topsoil over the entire property by now.
Ole,
So yes.
Ole, I don't know if you mentioned, but this Mandela Garden was a parking lot.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. So this was a 12-space, 5,500 square feet of asphalt parking lot. And on either side, when we started, it was grass. We thought, oh, that's going to be really easy to transform into gardens, but it was actually gravel that the grass had finally emerged through. So when we depaved it, of course, we removed all the asphalt. We work with depave.org. It's a local organization that does a lot of depave projects each year. So we took out 5,500 square feet of asphalt and now turned it into this really cool garden. And we had to scrape off all the gravel. When you depave something, you never know what you're going to find underneath the pavement. There actually was a house foundation. So this was a lot in front of the main building. And at one point, it had what looks like to be a large single-family dwelling, and the foundation was still there, including a couple of oil tanks. So we discovered those, and then we finally got rid of it all, and then turned it into this really cool garden. And about the same time, we drilled a 100-foot well here. So in the lower right corner, you can see our little well here. Knowing that we were going to be gardening and using a humongous amount of water, we knew it would be economical to drill our own well. When you have a commercial property like multifamily properties or commercial properties, you pay not only for the water, but all of the water you're charged sewer on also. And the sewer is actually the vast bulk of the cost. The water is about a quarter of the cost, and sewer is about 3/4 of the cost. So you totally avoid that just for the electricity of pumping. We tap into this gigantic aquifer under Portland. So that's been a really positive development. So we do a lot of composting. Everybody here is required to compost. One of the cool things about that is you get the food waste out of your dumpster, which stinks up your dumpsters. So all of a sudden you have clean dumpster with just primarily recyclable materials, but even your trash doesn't stink any longer when you get the food waste out. So this was developed to be rat proof. When we started, we did pallet compost bins, but it's totally impossible to rat proof those. And when you're in the middle of a city like this, there are rats living all around you in the neighboring properties. So you're prohibited in Portland from harboring rats. So we ended up removing the pallet composting bins, and we tried this method of using just 8 by 8 by 16 pumice blocks, and it worked really, really well. This is essentially a rat proof, or I mean, you might say rat resistant. Rats can still come in and they can enter the top. The blocks go down underneath, so they can't really burrow underneath. But because it's so exposed, they don't like living in a spot like this. So we'll have an intrusion once or twice a year, typically, where you see some burrowing and in the compost, top of the compost, but then they're gone. They leave because it's too scary an environment for them. So we have 11 bins. Each bin is about 2.5 cubic yards, and it takes us about a year to make a full pass all the way around. And so initially, residents would bring their kitchen compostables out and put them in buckets. And then we'd have work parties every couple of weeks. We've changed that system a year or two ago. So now people put their deposits directly into the current bin. And that's worked out really, really well. And then you cover with either shredded garden refuse or first pass compost. And it's worked out really, really well. We don't have the work parties anymore. So I mentioned the wood chip depot, community composting, wildlife habitat. So the rain gardens are great for wildlife habitat. So all the water from the building has been channeled into swales that encircle the circular garden in front. So we have extensive rain gardens, and we do a lot of native plant landscaping. We have, hence, we have habitat for amphibians and reptiles. We have butterfly gardens and pollinator gardens. We have lots of bird houses that are actually occupied. Our bat houses have been up for many years. We've never had bats move into them yet, but we've got our fingers crossed. So green features, as I mentioned, we produce about 2/3 of our own power on site. And that includes for supplies our 2 community electric vehicles. And with combining that with energy efficient remodeling, because we're an all electric building here, and we heat with resistance heat, which is the least efficient type of heat. We anticipate as we progress with our energy efficient remodeling, the 2/3, our 59 kilowatt solar array probably will at one point supply all our power and will be net zero. So a lot of resource sharing, cars, tools, books, magazines, other media, surround sound theater, extensive reduce, reuse, and recycling projects. Here's an example of our south roof rainwater schematic. So it used to be when we started, the downspouts would go directly into the sanitary sewer, which of course is not a good thing to do because it adds so much stormwater to the sanitary sewer system that they have to then process. So we disconnected those and kept our piping at just roof level and channeled it all the way down to the southeast corner. And this is where we have rainwater brook. So whenever it rains, there's a little stream here that cascades down the hillside. And so this is the south side. The north side we capture in exactly the same way, but we keep the water at roof height and channel it through a rainwater sculpture, which you'll see in a subsequent slide. So community vehicle sharing, deep paving, passive house remodel, rainwater retention, and of course the driveway, it's a sloped driveway, so we have speed bumps that actually capture the water at different points here, and that's all channeled into the garden. So all of this, the rainwater is kept on site, percolates into the ground and recharges our at the aquifer below us. We actually probably can pull out of the aquifer less than we put into it. So I mean, essentially, we're net zero for water for our gardens. So we do a lot of heavy duty recycling. We recycle everything that Portland does, plus we do styrofoam, deposit containers, compact fluorescents, corks, packing peanuts, plastic film, batteries. And of course, we have a free area where you can kind of recycle stuff or basically reuse stuff. And we have a food share uh, area in our breezeway. That's amazing. We work with Food Not Bombs, and they get some absolutely amazing donations. Uh, Less than a year ago, we were donated 1 ton of organic almonds. Can you believe that? Some of the things Food Not Bombs get. And 3 or 4 years ago, we got a ton of raspberry and blueberry puree from a farm in Corvallis. I don't know why they gave it, why they donated. I think probably the pull date was coming up. The pull date hadn't even passed yet. And so when things like that happen, we go into overdrive to distribute to the community. But on a day-to-day basis, we put our surplus produce there. One of our residents is a professional farmer, Neil from Farmageddon, and he has a booth at the local farmers market, People's Co-op. And when he comes back from, he sells a lot of our produce. So it probably sells about 5,000. We actually get $5,000 a year from his selling produce. We split the cost, split the receipts with him. And then when he comes back from farmer's market, any stuff that he didn't sell, he puts on our share table. So here's an example of one of our artistic endeavors. This is a rainwater sculpture. So I'm going to turn on this YouTube video. So the water is kept at roof height and then channeled through all these rain chains. And you can see there's 3 water wheels here. These are little bicycle dynamo hubs. So each one of those is generating like 5 watts of power. You know, they're used to power your headlights and tail lights on your bikes. So multiple themed gardens, a tea house with living roof. We have several living roofs, a lot of stained glass and sculptures, wooden sculptures and other sculptures on the property. So we push the envelope in recycling our nutrients. So this is our urination station. We recycle actually 10 to 15 gallons. This is probably bigger now. We have 5,000 liters of urine storage on site in those little IBC containers. Those are those little tanks surrounded by a cage. So we have 5 of those, and a lot of residents, not everybody, but a lot of residents save their urine. And not only does it allow us to reclaim the nutrients, but it prevents probably half a dozen flushes a day for each toilet that urine is diverted from. So we have a permitted humanure eco-sanitation system and gray water recycling. This is DEQ, and this is City of Portland and the state of Oregon. We don't use slaughterhouse byproducts, so you can say our organic gardening is actually veganic gardening, and we're able to do that by recycling the nutrients from our own bodies on site. Works out really well. Pushing the envelope depaving. So we've depaved 16 parking spots already, and our ultimate goal is the elimination of all on-site parking except for these shared vehicles here. So these are 2 electric vehicles. This is a Chevrolet Bolt, and this is a Nissan Leaf. This is for around town driving, and the Bolt actually has a 250-mile range. So you can go to the coast, you can go to Eastern Oregon, you can go to Roseburg or Seattle, and we keep the cost of renting the vehicles pretty low, just as cost of living here, we're well below market rents. So it's pretty inexpensive to live here. So I mentioned our ultimate goal is the elimination of all on-site parking, depave everything except the few vehicles and maybe a handicap spot, and turn it into gardens or some other greenhouse or some other use. But now that we have Annapurna next door, those that project is probably on hold because our attention is going to be diverted to getting the new Eco Village going next door. Oh, that's our wood chip depot there. You can see what it looks like. So pushing the envelope for carbon footprint. So we have kind of a yogic background here. We're not a religious orientation, but we are kind of a yogic orientation. So we promote veganic gardening and vegan practices. So we have a vegan community room, but people can eat whatever they want in their own units. There's no requirements about that. Community governance. So it took us 13 years, but we finally got everybody to agree on a kind of a community governance. And anybody who's lived in community knows that it can be difficult or quite a challenge to get a community to agree on a lot of things and agree to make decisions communally. So that's why it took us 13 years. We had several starts, but eventually we got it going. So we're neither a co-op nor co-housing. So the final land use decision and the business decisions were, dealing with the government, with permitting entities, with city, state, and federal authorities, rests with the owners. Nevertheless, there's substantial community self-governance through teams. So, for example, our group garden teams is totally autonomous. We give them the property and they can grow whatever they want. They start out in February deciding what they want to grow, and it's all, totally self-managed. So future projects, many of you may know about Mark Lakeman, who was one of the co-founders of City Repair. We got him to take a look at our building and imagine what the building might look like as an Asian temple. There's an Asian temple. So spires, we haven't done a lot of this yet. We have done the cupola, and the roof's covered with solar panels, but we haven't done these exotic touches yet. So some of the future projects are exterior makeover, further eco-sanitation projects, possibly including 100% of excreta recycling on site. The problem with that is if we had everybody recycle their nutrients on site, we'd have way more than we could use. And we're only permitted to use on site what we recycle. So what we'd have to do is start manufacturing compost or something like that, and then we could sell the compost. Our eventual goal is net zero to generate 100% of our power on site. We've got some potential spaces, like the crawl spaces under this building are 4,000 square feet. We've talked about remodeling that as workspace, and then we can explore further community governance models. So that's what Kailash looks like. And the reason I spent so much time on this is this sort of is serving as a template for the project next door. So we would be delighted if we could get Annapurna to look something like what we're doing here. Of course, it's going to be the same general financial structure. It'll be a rental model with ease of entry. Just first and last month is the only thing. You don't even have to pay a security deposit. Just first and last month to move in and get going on the projects. And then we want to create a community. Right now, people don't know each other there. I mean, it's, a typical if you ever lived in an apartment building in America, oftentimes people don't know the people who live 2 doors down or even maybe next door. So by focusing on developing community, you can create a really much more attractive space to live. And of course, it's less crime and, all the other supposed blights of living in an urban area. You can really minimize the negatives by creating kind of old-fashioned know each other neighborhoods and communities. So I'm going to close this. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm going to okay, so here's Annapurna Eco Village. So this is the property next door. Let's go through this. This is 10 slides. So turn presentation on.
Hey, Ollie, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, by the way, anybody can interrupt at any time if you want to make comments or ask questions, or I mean, this is a conversation. So yes.
Yeah, I just was really curious what your rents are there for the 30 units. What did you have a
Oh,
standard
okay. At Kailash, yes, great question. At Kailash, we have rents. Uh, some of the oldest renters here have been here, like George has been here, believe it or not, 35 years. So he's our kind of our link to the past. He has one of the lowest rents. I think he pays about 750 a month for a one bedroom unit. And the more recent people who are moving in are paying higher, over 1,000, but we're definitely below market value. Market value for a one bedroom in Portland is probably about 1,300 now. Um, so we're fairly frugal in terms of what we ask for our residents.
So
Okay.
are you charging for a new tenant that comes in or a new community member? Are you charging 1,300 for a unit?
No, no, we're still substantially below, but the new residents do pay more than the old residents historically have paid. I think the most recent residents to move in paid like 1,100, something like that. So we're a couple $100 below market values locally. And for some residents, they're paying like half market value, like George is paying like half of market value. Okay, so any other questions or comments?
I do, Ole.
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
I know that you have a couple of daughters, but have you and Maitreyi been putting thought into how, upon leaving this planet, you might roll the ownership of this property into some kind of a community land trust or nonprofit organization that would continue to manage it in a nice manner in your absence?
That's a great question. We have not made a decision about that, probably because we think we're going to live forever. But we have to be more realistic and realize I'm 69 going on 70. And, we're not going to be around here probably more than 10, 20 years, perhaps. I mean, I think my life expectancy probably is 25 years based on my age now. But yeah, you're right. We have to figure out what's the model for the future. And we're lucky that our two daughters live next door, which is fantastic because we get to babysit the grandkids. Uh, and they know pretty much the residents and are somewhat involved already. So they know what our mission is here. But we haven't figured out what the next model is for the future. Good question, though. Anything else?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you just so on the 30 units that you own, are you the proprietary owner of the development or do you open up ownership to your members?
Yeah, so we're an LLC. We started in 2007. It's the two partners are my wife, Maitri, and myself. And no, it's not a co-op. And the people here couldn't afford to, they don't have the wherewithal to join, but it hasn't been an option. One of the advantages of that is it makes decision making in for land use much easier. So for example, solar projects across town, Columbia Eco Village that I've mentioned a couple of times before. A lot of members there want solar, but it's so difficult to get 30 units of condominiums to agree on projects like that. I mean, they'll argue seemingly forever about the color of paint for the community room. So, yeah, the private ownership model is really streamlined to move forward fast. So we've been doing this 16 years and have been able to accomplish so much because we can move quickly. Uh, Co-ops are great. There are some housing cooperatives in Portland, but they're not by any means on leading the edge towards green development. And I mean basically they're just treading water. um but
Yes.
it brings up interesting, those are really interesting issues that we need to have a bigger conversation about.
Yeah. So like when it comes to electricity and water, are you charging your tenants or the community members utility fees that they each pay separately?
Yes, all of the units are metered. Yeah, the electricity is metered. The water, I think they pay a set fee. We split up the water cost among all the residents,
And then
water sewer.
did you charge them sewage separately?
Water sewers, comes together.
Comes
You know,
together?
I think it's about $20 a person per month.
Yeah. And then when it comes to the food, is everybody paying differently for the foods that they receive when they are participating in the community gardens?
Okay, so the community gardens, you buy a share, which is typically like $20 a share, and then you're expected to put in so much labor, and then you get to share the harvest. So, I mean, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so that's really nice.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
people that have their own private gardens, they don't participate in that plan. They have their own separate autonomy then.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So for the individual plot gardens, you grow exactly what you want. You make the decision. If you want to grow all flowers, that's fine. And then you pay $20 a year for your plot, and that includes unlimited water and then access to all the tools, of course.
Yeah. All right. That sounds nice. Thank you.
Okay, so Annapurna. So the idea is we're transitioning this derelict apartment now from the mile high view. This actually isn't a mile high, but from this drone shot here, it doesn't look that run down. But this place was in sad shape. You'll see some of the photos coming up. Essentially, the management had been missing in action for a couple of years. I think precipitated by the pandemic. You know, during the pandemic, you didn't have to pay your rent, and so I'm just speculating. I don't know what it is. Part of the issue was the owner um, just wasn't interested in the property at all. So they weren't collecting rents. Um, they weren't doing any repairs. I mean, basically, it was a Wild West. You were on your own. And when we started the project, uh, not quite a year ago, it was in like unbelievable shape. Anyway, you'll see what's going on. So a community's management goes missing with catastrophic neighborhood results. So this was a blight on the neighborhood. There were stolen vehicles, and this is where a lot of the local neighborhood criminals were residing. Anyway, you'll kind of see. So here's the kind of a rundown of the physical plant. So you look here, you can see Kailash here, and we share this, I don't know, 200-foot boundary right here. And there are 5 buildings, 85 parking spaces, humongous amount of parking. Swimming pool actually that still exists, unlike for Kailash, ours had been decommissioned before we started our project, but this pool was still here. But it's mostly grass and ornamental trees, lots of invasives. Um, so 53 units in 5 buildings are built in 1971. And this essentially boils down to a pretty much even mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Each unit has its own balcony with a storage room. Each building has its own laundry with 2 washers and dryers. There's an outdoor swimming pool and a pool house you can see right next to it here. 85 parking spaces. And then in this building right here, there are 3 garages here with a unit above it. And those are for management. It's kind of for appliance storage and tool room and stuff like that. And there are 14 separate addresses in these buildings. So this is from Google Maps, this photo. So this compares Kailash and Annapurna. Um, so Kailash, 2 buildings built in 1959 and 1926. Annapurna, 5 buildings built in 1971, and this little addition, 1-unit addition in 1977. Building space in square feet, 18,000 square feet of residential and communal space. For example, the laundry room, storage units, um, and the community areas in the building of 18,000 square feet. At Annapurna, 50,000 square feet. The lot size were 1.7 acres. They're 3.2 acres. And units, I mentioned, were primarily 1-bedroom, 1-bath units. We have a couple each of 2 and 3s, but Annapurna is 18 3s, 17 2-bedrooms, and 15 1-bedroom units. We have 1 laundry with like 3 washers and 3 dryers. They have 5, each one has 2. Parking spaces, we have 26 left. We started with 42. We have 26 left. Annapurna starts with 85, and we'll probably be paring this down significantly. Bike parking, there's 0 at Annapurna. We have spaces for 96 bikes here. We have a community and guest room. Annapurna doesn't have really any communal facilities. So the general conditions of Annapurna, only 17 were occupied by tenants with contracts. When we started the project, we took over management in February, or maybe it was March. I think it was March. 30 plus units were occupied by squatters without contracts. Now, it turned out that the landscaper or the maintenance guy was making cash deals with people. It was quite a situation, unbelievable. And then 6 units were vacant, and many were like uninhabitable, like the panels were torn apart for the copper, and the kitchens were all, demolished, no toilets, facilities. So as I mentioned, management had essentially been missing in action for the last couple of years. We took over management, I guess it was February. The property closed May 5th. Most of the unauthorized occupants were offered contracts, almost all accepted. No evictions occurred. Our total legal expenses were like $1,000 to clear the situation and get everybody legal. There were a small handful of residents who we did not want to stay. I mean, they were, how to put it, the nexus of criminal activity in the neighborhood. The police would come, every time they would come, they'd pick up 2 or 3 stolen vehicles. The parking lots were for partying out vehicles, and there were a lot of vehicle hulks, burned out hulks and stuff.
Dead body?
Oh yeah, so yeah, we had an overdose death before we closed. I mean, it was a sad situation, needles all over the place. So we thought when we started Kailash started like this. It was like, this is like Kailash on steroids. When we started ours, we did have drug dealing and some nefarious activities going on here, but there were only 6 units that were uninhabitable and vacant, no squatters. So this was like Kailash on steroids when we started. So anyway, 23 units are getting complete remodeling. We're just about finished with that. I think we have like 6 units that are still being remodeled. We have an interesting ethnic mix. So 18 units are Hispanic, primarily Spanish speaking only, immigrant population with minimal English skills, and 12 units are non-immigrant. Those are the ones that have been around for many years. The Kenneth Allen Apartments, as it was known, has gone through different stages of immigrant occupation. There was a Ukrainian phase and a Laotian phase, and so now we're in the Hispanic phase. And it's working out really great. We use Google Translate. My Spanish is medical Spanish, so it's not that great. And our son-in-law, who manages this property, his Spanish is better than mine, but we all use Google Translate a lot, and that actually is really very, very helpful. So, as I mentioned, the grounds, the landscape is a mixture of grass and ornamental shrubs and trees, lots of invasive patches of English ivy, wild clematis, blackberry, volunteer holly, and seedling cherry trees. All are considered invasive species by the city of Portland. A landscape crew visited to periodically mow the grass and blow the leaves around. And they were also spraying with herbicides to control dandelions and stuff. They weren't very successful, but they did it anyway. They had a landscape contract. Um, the conditions were pretty appalling. You can see this was, a typical site on site. There was trash everywhere. Um, the electric meters were constantly being vandalized. If your power ran out, you would just steal your neighbor's meter. And if the power company shut off your meter, you'd steal somebody else's, and then your power was back on. And the power company thought, that was the same the meters from the neighbor. So the neighbor had to scramble to find a new meter, and they were going on to neighboring adjacent properties and stealing meters there. It was a pretty amazing situation. Um, Lots of criminal behavior, such as vehicle theft and assault, property destruction and vandalism, substance abuse, including an overdose death, animal abuse. We had one unit had like 4 pit bulls in it that were in pretty bad shape. They were attacking other residents and local animals. Mentioned tampering with the electrical meters, all kinds of code violations. The property was getting fines every month for um, safety and health violations, and a severe rodent infestation. So, what's the plan? We want to turn it into Kailash. So, what are we doing? First of all, we got to get it solvent. So, we're doing remodeling of the units that were vacant, and that's been largely completed by now. Um, Energy Trust of Oregon is working with us to replace all the old single pane aluminum windows with high efficiency triple pane windows. That's now done. Eliminating the deferred maintenance, getting full occupancy, and then developing a permaculture landscaping plan. We're thinking we're going to probably try, it's kind of a hilly site. We're going to probably try and terrace the whole site. In the meantime, we've started converting grass and ornamentals into edible landscapes. And then we haven't done very much so far. We have a community listserv so far, but it hasn't been very active. Our focus has just been on remodeling and getting the place solvent to start out so we can pay the mortgage. I mean, we have to come up with 50 grand a month to pay the mortgage. We're installing community-wide free internet, securing the perimeter with repaired fencing and some gating. So one of our first projects was this site right here. We turned into a cucurbit patch, and we planted 40 different squash plants here, as well as tomatoes, and had a fantastic harvest. We also have a patch where we started a grape nursery to provide grapes for the property this next coming year. We're installing 6 charging ports for neighborhood electric vehicles. We're going to install probably in this site here, a community composting facility. Eventually, we'll do solar photovoltaics to supply the laundries and community power. Not sure if we'll do a vehicle sharing program at this site. Probably eventually we will. Using the old windows that were taken out, we're going to use that to create a greenhouse. Swimming pool options. The insurance wants us to decommission it. But we're thinking, how we might do something. We could use it for rainwater storage. Who knows what? I mean, we're just contemplating what might happen in the future. Depave, of course, we want to depave a lot of the excess parking spaces. So here's what we might look like in a few years. The gated entries actually are already in place. We haven't depaved anything yet. We've just started removing the ornamental landscaping, replacing with food crops, but that's just sort of baby steps so far. But down here in this corner, we're planning to do a 6-port EV charging station for residents and the neighbors. In this area here, we plan to do a solar PV array and greenhouse, secure bike storage, and probably composting here as well as in the northeast section here. And then here's a gate to Kailash, which we're next door here. So replace the grass and ornamentals with edible landscapes and depave a lot of the excess parking. I mean, Does this place really need 85 parking spaces? No, probably not. Okay, so that's kind of Annapurna in a nutshell. And how are we going to go about this? Well, you've seen what the steps we've already taken. I'm going to close this now. And I can stop screen sharing too. We can just go to, well, we might leave this up if we want to come back to some of these for questions or anything like that. Anyway, I'm would love to hear some feedback, and then we can address those questions that Rob, could you put up those questions? We can go through them. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna actually
You mean Jan, right?
Yeah.
Jan, sorry, Jan. Yes, Jan. Jan, could you put up those questions?
You need to end your screen share.
Right. So I'm trying to, for some reason, when I did this, it turned my screen into just 4 people. So what's that? Show grid. Okay. What I need is full screen, and I'm not seeing how to do that here. Here, screen sharing, maybe close that.
Okay, here, hang on.
Maybe you can close me.
Yeah,
I don't see how to do it
I think I
here.
can. I think I can.
I don't see the full screen. Oh, there. Here it is.
Okay. Your screen.
Great. Okay, great.
Yeah, your screen's been replaced, Ole.
Fantastic. I see it now.
Okay, so now we can go to these questions. Here are the questions. And let me just make this one comment, and it's not a response comment that you need to, but I just want to emphasize you did touch a little bit on community governance. But I know there's not time to go into every detail, but I really want to emphasize from what I know of Kailash is there's lots of different committees that do different types of services and work around the Eco Village, and that some of these, probably most, are voluntary, but I think it's really, really important to emphasize that people are learning new cooperative, intercommunity, interaction, communication type skills, for effectively working with each other. And mention, you can comment on that if you want, but I think that's really important to learn skills on how to listen to each other and how to cooperate with each other. Those aren't such common skills in the consumer culture.
Right. And leadership. So we have a lot of people who are learning to take leadership roles in leading group gardening or this or that project. So yeah, it's a fantastic place. We're kind of an incubator for sustainable culture, you might say, and everybody is on their own adventure, their own life adventure in how to figure out how they can become participant in a more sustainable way of living. So absolutely, for sure. Yes, that's right on. So what's your expanded vision or best case scenario for transforming apartment complexes? Well, we've been contacted, when we had Kirsten Dirksen, who's has a YouTube channel with 1.5 million followers or a couple million followers. She came and did a video on us, and that really made us way more known worldwide. And when that happened, we had a ton of people contact us asking, how can I do a project similar to what you're doing? And I said, what we try to do is we have developed a web page that documents all of what we're doing here, including so many of our projects. And so just check out our web page and see, that's sort of the model, and see what you can adapt, what makes sense in your particular situation. So that's made it kind of on autopilot. We've had a ton of people contact us, and they may want to pick and choose projects that we're doing, deep paving or rainwater recycling or solar power, all those different things that we're doing, community development, community governance. It's all documented on our website. So what's our vision is to see more and more apartment complexes get turned into sustainable communities where projects can happen like what we're doing here. And so that ultimately is our goal. And there are, as I mentioned in the second one, there are hundreds of thousands of apartment complexes that are, worldwide, all over across the country and worldwide, that are ready for some radical change if somebody is willing to roll up their sleeves and start the move. What motivates me to take these projects? Well, it's our own backyard. So uh, we have we've gotten a tremendous amount of satisfaction and pleasure from living in this site. I mean, we live in kind of an Eden, and people are constantly, saying how wonderful it is to live here. So what motivates us to take on another project? It's a lot of work, but it's exciting to, it's like when you start a garden. I mean, what's the excitement of beginning a garden? Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's so gratifying to shepherd a project through to some level of achievement and success. How do these projects fit into the scheme of societal, economic, and environmental transformation? Well, we're kind of a model. People here who live here get firsthand experience, but beyond our own residents, we're kind of a model for the neighborhood or the city or whatever, whatever uh, scale you want to take it to. But we're demonstrating how you can create community, be more sustainable, lower your carbon footprint, have fun, all of these things. And that can lead to a paradigm shift as people see a project that's working, experience it, hopefully, when somebody wants to start a new project that they can be involved in. And yes, it is a paradigm shift. I mean, the shift is completely different from single family living or living in the, consumerist society. Do you know of any other rundown apartment complexes turned into eco villages? I believe LA Eco Village was kind of a similar project. Um, that's one I know of. There's another one across town, actually not across town. It's about a mile from here. It's about a 1 acre and it's 7 units. Somebody took over ownership of that and started to create an eco village there. So yes, it's happening, but we need to accelerate the happening so it occurs more rapidly. I mean, let's face it, we're kind of in a planetary crisis now, and we need to take some strong measures to move forward. Yeah, Jan, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, you mentioned LA Eco Village. Uh, I will probably do an interview with Lois Arkin at some point, next year. Los Angeles Eco Village is something of a restoration project, and this isn't the time to go into detail of LA Eco Village, but they have their own version of what you're doing, Ole, given their location, bike friendly. They're wanting to turn a street along one boundary of the eco village into a pedestrian plaza, so there's no cars there at all. They turned an old automobile repair place into a new community center. It just goes on and on and on. So heads up, we'll be doing more interviews and presentations from these places here and there around the country over a period of time. So go ahead, Ole.
Great. That sounds fantastic, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Um, so would you or have you already been asked to advise any other apartment complex transformation? So yeah, we still get contacted, probably once a week. Somebody is interested in doing a similar project, and we refer them to our webpage, and Caleb talks with them. Sometimes we meet with them and give them advice on how to move forward with their plans. Other rundown apartment complexes in the area, hey, they're all over. So yeah, there are opportunities all over the place. So they need to be explored and see how to move forward. I'm not particularly interested in taking on another project. And I certainly wouldn't have done this had it been some distance away. It just turned out that this was next door, so it seemed like a perfect opportunity where we could work efficiently to move the property into a new life. So that covers your questions.